What makes a relationship mildly unhealthy versus potentially dangerous? Hi, ladies. My name is Diane of Artemis Healing Relationships, and I am here to support and empower ladies to deepen the respect, love, and connection in their relationships to other people and also to themselves. And this topic is very deep. Unhealthy relationships versus something that is potentially dangerous, abuse, domestic violence. And I have a wonderful guest here. She is the executive director of Doves. And Doves provides services and education to survivors of domestic violence. Doves has a shelter. They also provide legal advocacy and counseling, support group, classes, everything related to domestic violence. Please say a big hi to Helen Adams. Hi, Helen.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So excited to have you. You know a ton about domestic violence and anything related to unhealthy relationships and the cycles that some couples go through and some families go through.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, what got you working in this field?
Yeah, this is basically a second career for me. So I went back to grad school when I was 48, and I got my master's in marriage and family therapy. And at that time, in order to finish my master's program, I had to do 700 hours of therapy work somewhere at a nonprofit. And living in Big Bear, I preferred to stay here in town, and I was looking for any nonprofit that might, fit the bill for me for doing the hours I needed to do. So my husband, believe it or not, had done the 40-hour training at Doves before I did. And he said, honey, I think you need to do this training, and because this work sounds very interesting. It sounds like, right down your alley. So I had taken the training, and I thought, well, I'll just ask Doves if I can do therapy work there. So I did. So for about a year, I couldn't get paid. I had another full job. I worked for the school district, and I did my 700 hours. And after the 700 hours, the executive director then, Kathy, she said, would you like a job? So I said, sure. So my first job here at Doves was, I was the director of the shelter. So I do have experience in that realm, working with mostly women and children who are fleeing for their safety and needed a place to be. So that's where I started. And I did that for 2 years. And then the executive director left, and I was hired as the executive director. So never in my wildest dreams did I think I was going to do this job. So I thought I was going to do therapy work or whatever. So I also do some therapy work, a little bit, but my main job is I'm the executive director.
Mm-hmm. So as the executive director, and you've been doing this for quite a few years, you get to see all aspects and all of the needs of a person who is suffering, who is surviving domestic violence.
Absolutely, yes.
So that's a big word, domestic violence. Is there a definition for it?
There is. It's a pattern. That is the really important word right there. And I'm actually reading it so I get it exactly right, okay?
Sure.
So it's a pattern of abusive behavior used by one person to gain and maintain, and here's the next piece that's super important, power and control over an intimate partner, or it could be an ex-partner. So when we think about domestic violence, this isn't something that just happened probably one time, right? It's a pattern. It might have started, you might not even notice it at the beginning, right? If you're in this type of a relationship, it might start out more unhealthy. Maybe you're not communicating very well. And then your partner like stops communicating or starts insulting you or starts withholding money from you. You know, it can start very simple and grow into something else. And a lot of times, I'm going to give a personal example. I have not been through this. You know, I'm married to the same amazing man for 36 years now.
Yes.
But our first experience with a couple in an abusive relationship were some of our best friends from college. And we had taken this training, this 40-hour training for doves. And Brian came home, my husband came home one night and he said, honey, I think our friends, I think they're in a really unhealthy relationship. That's the word he first used. And he said, I think it might be abusive. And so we started connecting, particularly with the wife. She reached out to us. And yeah, we recognized after our training that they were not in a healthy relationship. And yes, it was abusive. So our first connection with really helping someone, and my first connection was not in like as a worker of doves. It was as a person, as a friend. So it took 3 years to help her get out of that. She was an intelligent woman. She was educated. They had money. So, you know, there's no reason you wouldn't think like, why is this happening to them? Right?
Sure.
But she hadn't worked for 20 years. She didn't have any of her own money. She didn't have a credit card. She didn't have a bank account. So it took time to help her. She had to go find a job. She had to get established. So, and again, I'm using her as the example or them as an example. They had dated for years. They seemingly had this great relationship. They were married like 25 years. But here's something that often happens. And it happened to them. They dated. Everything was hunky-dory. Everything was wonderful, right? It looked great. She was happy. He was happy. And it's almost like a switch
And they got married?
Almost immediately.
Yes.
Almost immediately. Yeah, she talked to us maybe a couple months after the wedding. This is years ago, right? And she said, and I said, hey, how's it going? You know, I was about to be a newlywed. We got married around the same time. And how's it going? And she just cried. She said, this isn't what I thought it would be. He changed overnight.
Yeah.
But she stayed with him for many, many years. And it wasn't until, so I'm kind of weaving in some things here that we can, you know, focus on more. It wasn't until he started hurting one of their children that she really took notice.
Yes.
So she herself was almost willing to take,
Anything.
insults and, you know, the uncomfortableness with him. But once he started to hurt one of the 3 children, she could not ignore it anymore. So that's often what some people, and this can happen to both women and men. It happens more to women. But this is what most, particularly women, will say is the thing, you know, if you ask them, what did it? What was it that finally made you decide I needed to change or I needed to get out? And a lot of times they will say, because he started coming after my child or my children.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, this is very heavy discussion here, but it's important for ladies and gentlemen out there to know, you know, the patterns and to start recognizing whether you or someone you care about could be in a situation like that and could be feeling trapped. And I can resonate with this story because this is my grandma's story. She got married, and the day after the honeymoon, the marriage, my grandpa said something to her, and she said, I visually saw the prison cell lock all around me, like she had this instant moment of feeling trapped, and she didn't get out. It was, she said back then, you didn't get a divorce, so she stuck with it for all her life. Yeah. So that's real. And can you tell us more about this word abuse? Is there a definition for it? Because that's a word that you hear about a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So what makes something go from just not being healthy to being abusive? Mm-hmm. So an example would be an unhealthy relationship. Maybe I'll do the, what something looks like and then what abuse would look like, more like that. And then I'll even pull in, okay, what does healthy look like? Mm-hmm. So unhealthy might be, sorry, I'm looking at some notes while we're talking because I want to make sure I get some main things in here. So an unhealthy thing in a relationship could be when your partner is just a little disrespectful to you. Okay, so they may not be as considerate as they should be, or as you think they should be. But when does disrespect go to cross the line into abuse? Mm-hmm. Well, when you feel threatened. Somebody can be disrespectful. They can say something to you, and you may not feel threatened by that. You may feel hurt, right? Mm-hmm. But when disrespect becomes more of a threat, and especially if it becomes a physical threat, that's when it becomes abusive. So when we think of domestic violence, we almost always think of physical, right? That's what, like if you say, what's domestic violence? And people have this image of, somebody hitting and slapping and a broken nose, which it is all those things. Mm-hmm. But I want to give you an example of some things that are considered physical abuse or domestic violence that most people don't think about. Okay. So, and I have heard almost all of these at one time or another from some of our clients. Mm-hmm. If your partner forbids you to eat or sleep, that is considered domestic violence, physical.
It's a basic need you have that's being taken away from you. Yeah.
If your partner prevents you from leaving, bars, stands in front of the door, locks the door, doesn't let you go, that's considered physical abuse. Mm-hmm. Abandoning you in unfamiliar places. Mm-hmm. And we hear mostly women talking about that. Yeah, he was mad. We were driving. He made me open my car door and made me get out. And we were 45 miles from home. That's physical abuse. Driving recklessly or dangerously with you or your children in the car is considered physical abuse. So those are just a few of the things that are physical, but what we see a lot and what clients tell us over and over is, honestly, even if the physical abuse has been really, really bad, these things plus more, the thing that is the most difficult for them is the emotional and verbal abuse. And again, those things can start out kind of, you don't notice it, right? They say something that's not quite nice, but it's not super bad. But then it happens over and over, and it doesn't stop. And it becomes, so we talked about initially about just being generally disrespectful. Yeah. So when disrespectful talk gets into the abusive category, then it becomes name calling. That's abusive. Insulting you. you stupid cow, you calling you names, criticizing you. That's abuse. That is considered emotional abuse. Trying to isolate someone from family or friends. We see this a lot, even with our teens that talk about when they're in a relationship that's not healthy, right? They're sensing it's not healthy. It's like they sometimes think it's a good thing. Like, well, my boyfriend, he wants to know where I am. He's texting me a lot. That means he really cares about me, right? That's now entering into that, not just unhealthy, that could become abusive. Or he won't let me go see anybody else. He won't let me be with my friends, that kind of thing. Am I answering?
Yes.
Kinds of things here? Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
So let's talk for a minute then about what's healthy. And when I think about what's healthy, and I'm going to just say, I'm very blessed to be in a relationship with a person for, like I said, many, many years, but he's my partner. And I think that's the key to healthy relationships is it's a partnership, right? You're not doing this and you're not like this where you're far apart on everything. You're doing this, but yet you're still your own people, right? Like I'm a very independent person. My husband's very independent. I guess it would look more like this. We're two people in a relationship, kind of moving down the road of life together, right? Sometimes we move apart a little. Sometimes we move back together. Sometimes it is like this. But it's a partnership. It's communicating, it's talking, it's compromising, right? So what we find in abusive or unhealthy relationships is there's often little or no compromising, right? It's like the person who's in control, who could be the man or the woman, they are in charge of you, of the house, of the finances, and there is no compromise. There is no give and take, so to speak, or very little give and take. So a healthy relationship is one where you can be yourself, right? Whoever you are, all the good, wonderful parts of you, and maybe the ugly, not so great parts of you, right? But in a healthy relationship, you look at both of those things and you let your partner be who they are. You don't, again, try to control them.
Sure. And there's this aspect of having individual freedom and coming together as a partnership out of choice, not necessarily out of neediness or wish to control the other one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this wish to control the other one is something we can find in mildly unhealthy relationships as well. And that's something that we can take ownership of and start to have awareness of, where am I being controlling in the situation. And it does not necessarily mean you are an abusive person, but you might have some tendencies that you need to watch for in a relationship. Otherwise we alienate the other person. And the trigger effect is that the person shuts down, starts to retaliate, and there's this kind of uneasy feeling between the two of you. So that's not necessarily abuse, but I think you gave us some amazing examples of the level of control and abuse that we can find physically, emotionally, psychologically.
Yes. And a lot of times people ask, okay, so what makes somebody be that way? Right? What makes somebody control?
Is it me?
And need to control? And most often, someone who is very controlling, and then they can move over into that being abusive area, right? They are generally a person who hasn't had control in their own life.
Mhm.
And most often, and because I'm a therapist too, right? So I
Yes.
study this and I look at it and I research things. I go to conferences and do webinars and things.
Mhm.
Most, particularly men who are controlling and become abusive, they have had some big traumas in
Mhm.
their past, and usually as a child or teen. And what's interesting is you would think that if someone has had a terrible trauma and has been controlled in their life, right? You would think that would mean they would be sympathetic, empathetic toward people who don't, who are struggling. But
Mhm.
what tends to happen is if you're a person that never had control and you were controlled,
Mhm.
what usually happens is they now become the controller.
Mhm.
Because guess what? That's what they saw, that's what they experienced. And now they're in a situation where, okay, I can have some control now. Now I'm going to do it, right? And
Mhm.
it's not a conscious choice like I'm going to start controlling my partner.
Mhm.
It just happens, right?
Sure.
So,
And there's a lot of very interesting research about neuroplasticity and how our brain develops as
oh,
from in utero already.
absolutely.
You can already start sensing the tension in the household. And so when you experience this as a young, at a young age, in your formative brain development years, you
Yes.
are very receptive to all of this, and you are in this threatened mode, in
Hmm.
the fear, flight or freeze mode
Hmm.
constantly if you are in that abusive environment when you grow up. So
Yeah.
very difficult
Mhm.
to change, but it is possible to
Yes.
transform it.
And you hit the nail on the head when you said neuroplasticity. We are living and we are working in an amazing time right now because of all the research that has been done in the last 30 to 50 years on the brain and understanding neuroplasticity. And to me, that gives us such hope for people to change. And I'm going to say, not just survivors of domestic violence can change, perpetrators can change too, because of how we know the brain can change.
Mhm.
Now, does it happen often or a lot with perpetrators or those who harm? Maybe not. Maybe they don't have the ability or the will to really work at changing.
The
Uh,
awareness might
the
be missing.
awareness, yes, but it is possible.
Mhm.
So I think that's the big thing with clients that we work with, and our kind of tagline at Doves is a place of hope. And I think that's where neuroplasticity comes in. We
Mhm.
are able to really assist our clients and support them toward hope, right? We can help them become full human beings that can do what they want to do what they need to do, get started again. We give them that hope, but they do all the work. Right? We're not
Yes.
the ones doing all the work, but
Sure.
we're like, I don't know, a conduit.
Mhm.
We're moving them, helping them move from this spot to this spot with hope. And
Yes.
yeah. So.
Wonderful. Well, that's hope is huge, and sometimes I talk to ladies who feel hopeless in their relationships, that the dynamic between them and their partner or their family member will ever change, and so they
Right.
feel deflated and tired and exhausted, and like, I don't know what to do. I've tried all these things and none of it is working.
Right.
Um, and our tagline at Artemis Healing Relationships is about supporting women to feel empowered. And so, is there like a little tip that you would share with ladies so that they get to start on that first step to feel empowered towards the hope of change? It might be a personal change, it might be a family dynamics change, whatever the change needs to be, this feeling of empowerment.
I think one thing that helps someone feel empowered is, believe it or not, setting boundaries. Right? I don't know if you've talked about that already.
Yes.
In some of your casts, but when we set boundaries for ourselves, that helps us kind of take back our power. So, and it can be as simple as setting a boundary is something like, okay, I'll use a personal example for me. Okay. I set a boundary that on the weekend, as best I can, even though I'm an executive director of a company, I don't do work. I don't do work. I really use my weekend to relax. I go on a hike. I watch a movie with my husband, whatever we do, right? But setting that boundary is a healthy thing for me personally, right? It helps me feel like, oh, I've got control of my life right now, right? I've decided what I'm going to do with these next 2 days, right?
Yes.
So that's a simple example. But in a relationship, we set boundaries all the time, and maybe we don't even recognize it. But, some strong boundaries would be, I am not going to allow someone to name call and degrade me. If that happens with my partner, I am going to walk out of the room. That's a boundary. That can be empowering for you to, instead of, because the other picture would be, my partner is yelling at me, my partner is criticizing me, and what I normally do maybe is sit in the chair and just let it happen, right? So just the act of standing up and leaving the room, that's empowering.
That's a great
So
point.
I don't know, those are just two different kinds of examples. And when you're in, I think, a healthy relationship, that in itself is empowering, right? So I think, like, again, I'll use a personal example. My husband is always so excited for me. When I do something new, or when something great happens at work, and that makes me feel empowered. It's like, oh my gosh, he noticed, he's happy for me. So that's another example of, like, when you're in a healthy relationship, how your partner can actually empower you some. Just by how they treat you and uplift you. So
wonderful.
I think, and I'm sure you were going to go here, and if I'm going there too quickly, let me know. But
no, that's totally fine. I just wanted to add something about setting healthy boundaries. I do talk about this in my training program. It's not about, just to clarify, it's not about shutting somebody off and breaking the connection and be like, talk to the hand, I'm not listening to you. It's more about tuning into your deeper inner needs. And that's something that not all of us are very proficient at, to understand what it is that we really need. Do I need space right now? Do I need comfort? Do I need connection? Do I need peace of mind? Do I need some a variety? So that's, and that's something I talk about even more deeply, but it's not about, I don't want to have to do anything with you.
Right. When I think too, oh gosh, do you ever do that? You just like lose your train of thought just right in the middle of saying something.
That's why I do keep all the time.
Maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. You said something and it's just like, oh, I need to say this, and it just like totally went out.
About needs, maybe.
Oh, I know. I remembered it. Yeah. And you said we don't oftentimes don't know what we need. And to do that, though, we've really got to learn to know ourselves and spend time with ourselves. And sometimes how the best way to do that is to be quiet, to take time to reflect. And in our society, we don't do that very well. I mean, generally speaking, we don't. We have to be very intentional to, have an intention to do that. whatever that means for you. For me, it's my first moments of the day are sacred to me, right? And I mean moments meaning maybe an hour. I have a routine. My husband walks to work at 6:30 every morning. So house is quiet. I go make the coffee. I get my, devotional meditation books out. And I sit there and I read and I write things down. I write in my gratitude journal. That's the first hour pretty much of every single day for me. Has it always been that way? Oh, no, it has not. But I have gotten into a rhythm, and I find now I so look forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the moments where I'm with myself, right? I'm with
Yes.
my thoughts, I'm with my emotions. And if you're a spiritual person, well, we're all spiritual, but if you're spiritual, religious, believe in God or a higher power, anything like that, that's when I'm connecting with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I get to know who I am too, by meditating, by being quiet. So just thought I'd throw that in there.
Thank you. It's great advice, and I'm all for creating positive habits that get you focused on your highest and best intentions, and getting you to be the person you really want to be, as opposed to having to rush here and there. It is a challenge in this society, especially if you have young children and you're working. There's a lot of demands on us, and it's
definitely.
So let's be kind to ourselves, because it's not necessarily how it was supposed to be, but this is what we have to deal with. So we can support one another in creating these habits.
And may I just share what I believe to be one of the most important practices that anyone can do. And that is to have a gratitude practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage this with every therapy client, no matter what they're seeing me about. This is the very first thing we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And because this is about mindset, right? It's about being intentional and looking for the good in your life. And even when things aren't good, there is still something, just a small sliver of something that we can all find that is good. And so that is a very real thing, very intentional thing for me. I have a gratitude journal. I'm on my second one. The first one I did 1,000 things. I listed 1,000 things I was grateful for, and I did not repeat. They had to be all new things. Mm-hmm. And now I do it every day or two, and I jot 3 or 5 things. But that in itself is a way to focus on what is good in your life. And then when you are in a rough patch, things aren't going so well, you can pull that gratitude journal out, and you can just start reading down the list of the things that you have indicated to yourself that are good, that have been good in your life. There's a lot of science behind it, a lot of research behind it. So if I could encourage anyone to do one thing that will help you grow, maybe even be empowered, right? Start a gratitude practice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's the one I guess you would be saying, because over the years, that's what I've noticed has been the most helpful to me in creating that positive and empowered mindset. And I don't journal. I used to write it down. I used to write everything I would be grateful for.
Yeah.
But I was not in tune with the writing process of it. So instead what we came up with as a family is, before we go to bed, the whole family says what they're grateful for the day. You need to have at least 5 things.
That is great. Yeah.
And when we're very tired, which happens sometimes, we are allowed to say, I'm grateful for everything.
Yeah, that's okay.
And that includes, as you were mentioning, the pain as well. at times, like, what is the silver lining? Well, if I'm in pain or I'm suffering right now, this is hard. Well, at least I'm alive. You know, I'm feeling
Yeah.
something, and there's something I can do about it.
Right. And that's so important to, even though we're looking for what's good, that doesn't mean we don't acknowledge how things really are, right? And even, as we're talking about unhealthy relationships and abuse, and we can't act like it's not happening, especially if you're in the midst of it. Sometimes, we try to push things under the rug and we ignore it, we dismiss things. But it's healthy to acknowledge, hey, I'm in a really bad place right now, or I'm really hurting. That's important. We need to acknowledge where we are. Yeah.
Yes. It's okay to say, hey, I snapped. I feel very raw right now. I'm sensitive.
Yeah.
I feel overwhelmed. I feel off.
Absolutely.
It's okay to express those things.
Yes.
Wonderful. Let me look at my notes. I don't know if there's anything I wanted to mention.
There was something I wanted to mention. I wanted to just, and you might have this somewhere in your notes, but what to do if your relationship is potentially dangerous or abusive, or you need to do something. So as the story I shared about our friends, from college, the first thing is, if you're in some sort of relationship that you need help, reach out to somebody, a trusted friend, a coworker, clergy, counselor, therapist, wherever it is you feel comfortable going. There's so much online support. Now we're in the world of social media, all kinds of information on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and websites. And, some people get a lot of help by seeking that out, reaching out to an agency like Doves. And we, like most agencies like ours, we have a 24-hour hotline. There is always going to be a warm body that's answering that phone. Even if you don't need to be our client, you don't need to come in, you don't need to go to shelter necessarily, or even come into the outreach and become a client. Maybe you just want to call the hotline every once in a while and talk through some things. We have, trained advocates that are more than happy to speak with you. The main thing is, if you are in a dangerous situation, you got to get out. Like, you literally, if it's safe for you to get out from your house, you go. You call 911, you do whatever you have to do to stay physically safe first. And if you are that friend or that family member or the person that they come to, like my husband and I were, right? She came to us. We didn't know what to do. There's no rule book, especially if you're just you've been friends for years. You don't necessarily know how to deal with this situation.
Sure.
Just listen to your friend, right? Or your coworker, and then help them find resources. It's not up to you to have all the right answers, right? It's not up to you to save them, or, you do what you can. And maybe it does involve you having them in your home for a night, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe that's not safe for you. So don't feel like, if you're the one that, they seek out for help, don't feel like you have to know everything. You go to a place like Doves that does know. And then you can even come in with your friend, or call with your friend, or, I just had that this week. I had somebody text me, a client, and say, I have a friend who needs to come in. Can I come in with her? I'm like, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sure.
So.
Sure. It's wonderful if you have if you're that person who still has a support network, and you have a listening ear, and you have people who are in sound relationships, it's wonderful to reach out to them. Don't be afraid to do that, for sure. That's not always the case, though, because by the time you are in a deeply ingrained abusive relationship, you might have been cut off from all your support system,
Yes.
right? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And the people you have in your environment might be people who are themselves not able to, or they might give you advice, but it might not necessarily be helpful advice if it doesn't come from an understanding of what a healthy relationship is,
Right.
an understanding of what empathy or compassion means.
And I'm really overwhelmed with thinking about how brave our clients are and how much courage it takes to even just pick up the phone, right? And call a hotline. I don't know. Could I do that? I'm not sure. Or the ones that get in their car or get on a bus. And I mean, we've had people in our shelter come from West Virginia and Colorado, Kansas. They got on a Greyhound bus and found us, called the hotline and came. That is so courageous. And just to sit and tell someone your story. So when our friend came to us and said, I need help, I felt honored that she even was telling us her story. And we feel that way here at Doves as we're working with clients. It's an honor to be invited into their lives. And we don't take that lightly. We know that that's a difficult thing, a brave and courageous thing. Yeah,
for sure. And Helen, could you please share with us the hotline for domestic violence, the 24/7 hotline you can call?
Yes, anytime. It's 1-800-851-7601. Should I repeat it?
Sure.
Okay, 800-851-7601. Day or night.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us here and sharing some very deep stories of real people. There is some real pain in all of this, but there is some hope. There is some light at the end of the tunnel. So is there anything else that you wanted to share with the ladies and gentlemen out there?
I just think, no, don't give up. If you're in a questionable, unhealthy, maybe abusive relationship, don't give up. Seek someone out. Seek help if you need to. Because there will be somebody on the other end of a phone or in the office that will help you. And we would love to help you. If you're in Big Bear, come to Doves. We'd love to help.
Wonderful.
So I just want to say thank you for what you are doing. I didn't realize you even did this. And I literally stumbled upon something on Facebook one day and I was like, this is amazing. Even sharing your knowledge and your heart and your passion, I think is so important. And I thank you for inviting me to be part of it.
Well, thank you, Helen. It has been a personal journey of mine. I must say, 25-year journey. It might not look like it, but my journey in personal development and wanting to have nothing to do with domestic violence, it has been my life goal, because that's the family environment I was in, from several generations, and I was like, I'm breaking this cycle, and so I have to learn, and there is a lot to learn, and wonderful skills and tools and strategies that we can implement in our lives. Some are easy to implement, others are deeper and more thorough, but there are tools out there to change.
Well, thank you for sharing. I just think it's amazing what you're doing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Helen. It was a pleasure. And I will see you on the bright side.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.